I mean, I guess that brings us to a slightly different issue, but we're an increasingly urban species.
Hmm.
So most people grow up in environments where they don't encounter nature of any type very much at all, and so they don't know about it. You can't love something that you're unaware of it really exists, that you never encounter. So they're not going to care, if they hear that bees are going extinct or whatever it might be. It's just an abstract concept because
Hmm.
they don't, they've never really interacted with them. They've probably seen them on television at most. And so it's a real obstacle to getting people on board to tackling these problems is they're unfamiliar. In fact, many people are terrified of insects because they're not used to them, and anything buzzes near them, their first reaction is to try and kill the poor thing,
Hmm.
which is kind of nuts. And I mean, my mission in life is to try and get people to love insects, but it's an uphill battle with
Hmm.
most people, sadly.
So, which brings me on to another really good point in here about how insects are valued in different cultures. So in our culture, we have this real aversion to insects now, as you say, because we're very
Mm.
urban. Children are not as engaged with the natural world as they were before. So here it says roughly 80% of the world's population regularly consume insects, which is the complete opposite. People. That's one of the things that I find really surprising is that how many people actually eat insects. Yet here it's completely unheard of, considered disgusting. I mean, I've eaten insects before. Been to some events where I've had them, and it's fine. You just get over it, don't you? But then, I spent a lot of time in the woods as a child, so this sort of thing never really bothered
Yeah.
me too much. Um, and it says here the practice is very common in South America, Africa, and Asia, especially with indigenous peoples in Oceania. And approximately 2,000 different insect species are regularly eaten by people,
Mm.
which is
They're
a.
they're they're really nutritious. I mean,
Mhm.
it's very odd how we came to not eat them. It doesn't make
Mhm.
any real sense. And yet we'll happily wolf down a shrimp,
Yeah.
which is related. They're arthropods. They've got exoskeletons. They've got lots of legs, and why do we find that tasty? Whereas a locust, which is pretty similar, really, most people would look in absolute horror if you tried
Mhm.
to stick one on their dinner plate. Um, I mean, that all of this said, I'm not an advocate that we should be going out collecting wild insects and eating them because there aren't enough of them, and they can't afford to be harvested. One more
Yeah.
thing going on, but there is a case to be made, maybe for breeding insects
Mhm.
for food, because they basically they're really nutritious and they're much more efficient at turning plant material that's inedible to us
Mhm.
into juicy, protein-rich, fat-rich uh, material that's really good for us. They're much more efficient than the animals, the livestock we normally keep:
Mhm.
pigs, cows, chickens, whatever. Um, and they use far less water, and you can rear them in much less space. So things like crickets and mealworms and so on, may have real potential to help feed the world sustainably. And that said, I think actually the simpler solution is just to eat less meat.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not completely vegetarian, but if we could all scale back consumption of livestock, that statistic, 60% of the world's mammals are cows and pigs and sheep these days. Well, if we didn't eat so many, then there would be fewer of them. Maybe that sounds counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Mhm.
And it's a really inefficient way to feed the world's population, the amount of mammal and bird meat that we currently consume. So maybe a few more insects and a few more vegetables would be a much healthier diet.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, it's also thinking about how you can utilize them in a way to support processes we're already involved with. So, for example, I've seen there's a type of mealworm that they're using to eat sort of polystyrene and things like that. I don't know if
Oh,
you've seen this.
no, I hadn't.
Yeah, there's a type of I'm sure it's a type of mealworm, some sort of grub,
Yeah.
which can eat a certain type of plastic and break it down. So they're using that to as a way to manage some types of plastic waste.
Mm.
Then there's another type which they can use very grimly to consume human waste. But because of the way their gut works, essentially it's inert. So you wouldn't want to, but you could in theory eat those insects after they've consumed that.
Tasty.